You stood on the sidewalk of a small road in your neighborhood. A guy with unruly lavender hair stood looking down at you, and you were immediately struck by the expression in his violet eyes. Like he was breaking on the inside. It affected you so much that instead of asking who he was or how you'd gotten there, you asked, "Are you okay?" Pain flickered in his eyes. "Do you know me?" You frowned, confused. "I don't know." The violet eyes went emotionless, expression turning bored and neutral. "Don't worry about me," he said, turning and walking away. He was so cold that you wondered if you'd initially misread him. Shrugging off the strange encounter, you walked home to get ready for your first day at UA tomorrow. You got out your phone to text Midoriya, an excitable little guy you'd met at the school tour. You frowned, noticing that your top conversation was blank. You clicked it. "You have deleted this conversation," the notification read. All the conversations you remembered were still visible, so you figured it was an error. The next day, you found your way to Class 1B of the Hero course. You saw the purple-haired guy again, and your heart felt an inexplicable pang. He was walking down the hallway, bored-looking, and didn't even glance at you. A guy's voice spoke from right next to you. "So, you're not hanging out with that future villain anymore." You looked up to see a blonde guy looking down at you. He was kind of cute, but you didn't like his leer. "Who?" you said, frowning. "Hitoshi Shinsou," the guy said smugly. You two seemed to be ignoring each other. "I think you have me mixed up with someone else." The guy stared at you, eyes widening. "He really did it," he muttered. "Look, you were truly irritated at this point. Nice to meet you or whatever, but I have to get to class." "I'm Kaji," the boy said, a smile tugging at his features as though he knew something you didn't. You ignored him. You liked your class, but the Kaji boy was annoying, and you couldn't fathom why he had a group of noisy friends following him. You'd never liked the spotlight, but Kaji seemed to think you wanted to be the center of his attention. You sighed with relief when it was time to walk home. "Listener, come hang out with us," Kaji yelled obnoxiously. You looked up to see him at the wheel of a bright red convertible, leering at you with a couple of friends. You ignored them, continuing to walk. They pulled up beside you. "Why so cold, listener?" Kaji pestered. "I have things to do, so later," you said curtly. "She thinks she's better than us," one of his buddies laughed. You ignored them, but they were persistent. You'd have to use your quirk. Could this day get any more irritating? You focused on the visual of your body walking forward, and used light to create a realistic hologram, which continued to walk forward even as you stopped. You used a separate hologram to mask your actual presence. They fell for it, continuing to idle forward alongside the walking hologram while getting increasingly annoyed. You eased backwards around the sidewalk corner, holding the hologram as long as you could. You heard them shout in anger when the hologram vanished. You grinned wickedly. First day at school and you'd already made enemies. But you felt better than you had when Kaji had been treating you like another of his buddies. You sat down dizzily. Light weaving took a lot of energy really quickly, and if you pushed it too far, you blacked out from low blood sugar. Your phone dinged. You pulled it into your lap to look at it. Good, you'd gotten a job helping Aizawa with paper grading. Your phone dinged again. A text. From Kaji? Why did you have him in your contacts? You stared, perplexed. "Playing hard to get, eh?" he'd said with a little winky face. How dense was this guy? "Not interested," you texted bluntly, hoping it would shut him up. He texted back a bunch of laughing emojis. You shuddered at the cringiness and blocked him from your contacts. That ought to send the message. When you showed up to work later that week, Aizawa was asleep in his sleeping bag. You knocked hesitantly, and he sat up, then climbed out and showed you around the workspace behind the teacher's lounge. The workroom was small but organized, with a large window that flooded the space with light. You liked it immediately. Before long, you were halfway through a bunch of grading. Aizawa had a different curriculum than 1B, but you enjoyed learning the extra info indirectly as you graded. You looked up when someone walked into the room. It was that guy with the messy lavender hair. Something flashed through his eyes when he saw you, but it was gone so quickly that you may have imagined it. He looked colder and more emotionless than ever. Kaji had called him a future villain. But Kaji was an annoying idiot. Still, that emotionless look was intimidating. "You work here too?" he asked neutrally, but you got the feeling he wished you didn't. That was rude. "Yes, I'm helping Aizawa with grading." He sounded discontented. His eyes lingered on you, then he turned away sharply. "What's your name?" you asked. "You can call me Shinsou." He sounded annoyed at his own name. Setting down his things, he collected a bunch of papers from the far corner of the room, then picked everything up and left. You blinked. He wasn't going to grade in the workspace? That seemed like an unnecessary hassle. Was he avoiding you? What a strange person, Shinsou. You noticed that he'd left his wallet behind when he'd gathered everything up with the papers. You picked it up. It was the weekend, so campus would be locked soon. You sighed. You supposed you'd have to find some way to get it back to him, and you'd probably just get a scowl for thanks. You'd been giving Kaji the slip all week. You had no patience for the games and drama of an egotistic boy. He kept trying and failing to humiliate you in class. You reciprocated with minimal effort and a bit of light weaving. Your miniature hologram impressions of Kaji behind his back had the entire class roaring with laughter, while Kaji sputtered with rage, flames flickering in his hair from his quirk, and you stared innocently. But you noticed that he'd been trying to ambush you outside of school with his two buddies, so you had to be careful. You tucked Shinsou's wallet into your backpack. Last time, you'd seen Kaji's crew lingering out of sight by the sidewalk on the south side. Good, no sign of them. You sighed as you walked on, but sudden hands yanked you sideways as you walked through the exit. You struggled, light weaving instinctively, but the assailant ignored the false versions of you that sprang up, his grip tightening. You looked up into Kaji's annoying face, and your lip curled in disgust. He was laughing softly. "You like pranks, right, listener? Figured we'd return the favor after your little light tricks." He had you pinned against the school wall, shrouded in the shrubbery. His two buddies looked on smugly. "Let's see." His hand unexpectedly traced your face. "What would be the worst we could possibly do?" You glared at him, flushing, and felt sick. You saw now that Kaji wasn't just annoying, he was downright dark. His smile widened, eyes lightless. They began toying with you, pulling off your shoes and jacket and slinging them into a tree. One of the buddies had a pain quirk. You screamed in agony as he touched you, but the other one had a sound quirk that kept the sound contained. You felt weak and shaky, sweaty. Your quirk had activated unconsciously while you'd been in pain, light blossoming brightly in random patterns around you. Between the agony and your quirk usage, you were too weak to resist as they began shoving you towards each other and catching your stumbling form in a cruel game. You fell to the ground, on top of the contents of your backpack, which they dumped out earlier. Shinsou's wallet. Fingers trembling, not really thinking, you opened it. The blood rushing in your ears made it easy to tune out Kaji and his obnoxious jokes between his friends. The wallet was neatly organized on one side, in a minimalist way. The other side, you tried to comprehend what you saw. It was you. The photo behind the clear protective pocket showed you laughing at the camera as you took the selfie with one hand. Your other arm was around the neck of the purple-haired boy, ruffling his hair teasingly. He had a cat on his other shoulder, and was looking at you with an amused smile. What? Something snapped in your brain. 1,000 memories flooded in within a single moment. Young Hitoshi Shinsou, laughing at your light-weaving mimics. Hitoshi feeding stray cats. Hitoshi throwing popcorn at you with a dry grin. Hitoshi holding you for hours, when you cried after your dad's funeral. Watching him help people when he thought no one was looking. The long conversations. Your respect for his morals and logic. Standing up for Hitoshi when people were jerks to him for his brainwashing quirk. Jerks like Kaji, who'd known both of you. Shinsou's eyes tearing up when he found you afterwards trembling on the ground. His quiet, while he listened to you rant about how people were idiots, and he'd prove them wrong. the dark circles under his eyes getting worse, as he started to worry about you as more and more people began picking on you more often. He'd started to get in fights all the time, not willing to let go of anything anyone did to you. Shinsou could be intimidating. You acted spunky, but no one was scared of you with your innocent bright eyes, petite stature, and bouncy step. So they took their fear of Shinsou out on you, thinking they could scare you into silence and Shinsou wouldn't find out. You remembered Shinsou punching Kaji in the face when he'd found the jerk standing over you. You remembered Kaji and his friends threatening Shinsou, telling him that you'd be in danger as long as you kept associating with a future villain. Shinsou arguing with you later, saying stupid stuff about how he was being selfish by keeping you in his life even with all the pain you were going through. His frustration with not being able to protect you all the time. "Do you think it's easy for me to do this?" he'd asked. It broke your heart to see him like this. "Hitoshi," you started, but Shinsou's quirk unexpectedly washed over you, making your eyes go blank. He'd walked over to you sadly. "Delete me from your phone. All the texts, the contact info, everything." You slowly raised your phone, infuriated as your hands obeyed him. What kind of stupid stunt was this? Everything was deleted in moments. He wrapped his arms around you, stroking your hair gently, and crying? You thought you heard a slight sobbing breath. "Now," his voice was unsteady, "forget all about me, listener. Block all the memories of knowing me." You panicked at what he was attempting, but his quirk reinforced his words and it was impossible to fight. "Forget everything about me," he repeated, the power of his quirk surging through you every time he repeated it. You struggled mentally, horrified at losing the memories of your best friend, but with each repetition of the command, you forgot why you were fighting it. Tears spilled from your eyes, emotion welling in you so strongly that it was hard to breathe as you lay on the ground next to Shinsou's wallet. Your childhood best friend. Kaji grabbed the collar of your shirt, hauling you up so that your feet dangled, his face right next to yours. You didn't care about Kaji. You were still thinking about Shinsou. Idiot. He'd probably been falling apart after what he'd done, all because he thought erasing your memories was the best way to protect you. "Look at me," Kaji demanded, annoyed. Your attention returning to your predicament, you saw and took the opportunity to slam your forehead into Kaji's nose. He howled, dropping you. You tried to run, but your blood sugar was too low. Your vision went dark around the edges for a moment, and you fell flat. Kaji's buddies grabbed both your arms, holding you upright since you were too dizzy to stand, while Kaji stood there, hand over his bleeding nose. Flames flickered through his hair as he seethed at you. "You'll pay for that, listener," he said, advancing. He reached for you. "Kaji!" Kaji turned and Shinsou hit him at full speed, driving him to the ground, twisting his arm painfully. Kaji howled again. "Hitoshi!" He was so familiar, his face, his unruly hair, his voice. Your eyes filled with tears again. He'd probably come back for his wallet. Unexpectedly, excruciating pain flared throughout your body. You screamed, light patterns flowering from you as your muscles and quirk acted randomly on their own. The ringing in your ears died down as you heard Kaji's buddies saying, "If you don't release Kaji, we can keep doing that." Shinsou was staring at you with a tortured look in his eyes. His expression hardened. "This was never about my quirk," he growled. "It was about listener not liking you, wasn't it?" The rage in his face was scary. He twisted Kaji's arm further than it should go, then released him where he lay whimpering. Shinsou walked towards you. "Stop," said the buddies nervously, filling you with a second of agony again. You failed to hold back your scream. The fury in Shinsou's face intensified, but he did not stop. "Let her go," he said, voice soft with fury. "Got that. Only if..." Kaji's buddy stopped short, caught by Shinsou's quirk. He released your arm abruptly and you half fell, still held by the other arm. The brainwashed guy turned and punched his buddy, knocking him out cold. Both arms free, you fell forward. Shinsou caught you. His arms encircled you, scooping you up and hugging you to him. "Listener." He looked down at you with pain in his expression. His attention snapped back to Kaji's gang. Go inside and tell Principal Nezu everything you did. The guy turned stiffly, obeying, while Shinsou glared disdainfully. The other guy was out cold. Kaji still lay on the ground whimpering in pain. That taken care of, Shinsou walked away purposefully, still carrying you. He kept darting worried glances at you as you breathed weakly in his arms. You've used your quirk too much. You were glowing so brightly, he muttered. Now your blood sugar is dangerously low. Hitoshi, you whispered. He froze, stopping short as he stood there cradling you. You'd used his first name. His shocked eyes focused on yours. You remember me? You nodded, your eyes fluttering shut as your vision blacked out. You woke up tasting something sweet. It turned out to be a pixie stick, basically pure sugar, which Shinsou had sprinkled into your mouth in the hopes of helping your blood sugar to recover. That made you smile in amusement. It probably had helped, though. You definitely felt better. You were in Shinsou's room, laying on top of his neatly made bed. He was at his desk, his back to you. You squinted at the computer screen. He was reading a scientific study comparing effectiveness of treatments for helping someone recover from low blood sugar, as he unconsciously rolled a second pixie stick between his fingers. His anxiousness made you chuckle for some reason, and he instantly spun around. Listener. Hi, Hitoshi. You smiled. He seemed at a loss for once. Relief flashed over his face. Then he rolled his chair closer to you, looking subdued. Listener. I'm really sorry. You reached out to him and he took your hand hesitantly. For blocking my memories? You glared. Shinsou didn't look away, but his eyes showed his pain. For that, and for not seeing what was really going on. I should have been there for you. They should never have been able to touch you. You examined your friend. He seemed angry at himself, like he couldn't forgive himself and wanted to be punished. Oh, Shinsou. He was so strong, but in some ways he was more delicate than you. He always held on to things, and it gave him a higher risk of angst, as you teasingly told him many times. Stop it, you said, making him stare in surprise. What? Stop beating yourself up. Your angst levels are more worrying than my blood sugar levels. Should I internet search treatments for you? He blushed. You saw that, huh? Yes. Anyways, I'm just happy to see you, Hitoshi. I forgive you completely. You held his stare so that he could see it was true. Just don't ever erase my memories again. I don't want to lose you. He stared at you, befuddled by your complete acceptance of him. That's how it always was with you, but it surprised him every time. He wondered if you knew how much it changed him for the better. Without thinking, he leaned down and kissed you. You were so startled that you barely remembered to close your eyes. It was softer and warmer than you expected. It felt right, as though you'd known all along that Shinsou was more to you than a friend. And I don't ever want to lose you, he smiled as he leaned back. Your heart thumped in your chest. His cat, Eraser Whiskers, chose that moment to leap onto the bed and step lightly up to your body, licking your nose. You laughed, tickled by the whiskers, and Shinsou laughed with you. Kaji and his friends were expelled from UA and placed in remedial school for juvenile delinquents. Not only had the brainwashed student confessed to Nezu, but Nezu had also replayed the security tapes around the school perimeter and watched the entire incident. People still occasionally gave Shinsou shade for his cold manners and intimidating quirk, but you stuck by each other, and eventually people came round. Ever since you'd gotten your memories back, Shinsou had been keeping an extra close eye on you, protective to the core. People's attitudes were definitely improving, though. Not being intimidating had some benefits. People acted as comfortable around you as they were uncomfortable around Shinsou, so it wasn't hard to get conversations going with the curious students. Hitoshi's actually a big softie, you confided in your dubious classmates. He just doesn't show it right away. He's like a cat. You felt a strong hand on your shoulder. What are you telling them about me, listener? He shrugged innocently. Nothing? Hitoshi gave the group of students a flat look as though to say, "Can you believe this, girl?" The group of students laughed at the expression, the walls between him and them breaking down already. Well, Hitoshi's eyes sparkled in amusement. This cat wants food. Let's go find some. Pixie stick? You offered? Hitoshi laughed. Hi guys, it's Anya Kay. Thanks for listening. I wrote the fanfic, and I will write and record a brand new fanfic every week. If you'd like to be one of the first to know about my uploads, be sure to ring the bell and subscribe. I hope you have a great day. See you later.